9.5 FM.
It's a very frank discussion, and again I underscore cordial.
Despite this, Attorney General Faris Al-Rawi says the government and opposition failed to arrive at a consensus on the anti-gang and bail bills. AG Al-Rawi and a team from the government met with opposition members for approximately 2 hours at the Parliament on Wednesday. The AG said the government maintained its position that the bills should be extended to determine whether the anti-gang and bail bills have proven to be effective crime-fighting measures, but the opposition put forward its demands.
We requested information so as to guide us in our deliberations at our caucus. Unfortunately, that data has not been forthcoming from the various institutions that he requested.
At a news conference that followed, Chief Whip Ganga Singh said the data was crucial in whether or not the opposition gave its support. And opposition leader Kamla Prasad Biswas is hoping the AG produces the information before Friday's debate.
I think it will put us at a severe disadvantage in coming to a properly informed position should that information be lacking.
Should the opposition withhold its support on Friday, certain clauses in the anti-gang and bail bill will cease to be law. AG Al-Rawi says he's hoping that doesn't happen.
One can only hope that there would not be an inconsistent position in supporting it one day as a government and in not supporting it as an opposition. So I'm hopeful that the logical analysis of this will yield positive results.
Rhea Rambly, CNC3.
And with that report from Rhea Rambly, our colleague from CNC3, we begin a newsmaking segment here on Sky 99.5 FM, looking at the issue of the bail bill and the anti-gang legislation. On the line with us right now is member of the Police Service Commission and a senior attorney, Martin George. Good morning to you, Martin George.
Hi, good morning to you, Jesse.
Morning, Mr. George.
Good morning to your panel. Good morning, Edison. Good morning, Dr. Wayne.
Oh, Dr. Wayne is still on assignment.
Oh, okay. All right. Good morning, Edison.
Yes. So you would have heard arguments going to and fro. First, the Law Association reiterating most forcefully their concern with the legislation. And then the opposition coming out and saying that they're not sure if they're going to support it, which some would say is rather strange since they were the ones who drafted it in the first place. Yeah?
Well, Jessime, what we have seen consistently in Trinidad and Tobago, and I mean, at least one thing you must give our politicians is that they are consistent in that they always play this political merry-go-round. In other words, when one side is in government, of course, they want all the legislation and all the measures to help to combat crime, and the opposition would then seek to thwart and frustrate that so that the government looks bad, so that they can then say, well, the government is not dealing with crime and crime is out of control. And when they get into government, the shoe is on the other foot, and things that they were opposing, they are now in favor of, and then they will say, well, look, yes, you should now support it. And this has been the tragedy and the travesty of our, system of, legislative, process whereby they try to deal with issues of crime and criminality, and that has been the root of the problem. They keep playing politics with crime all the time. It's always an issue of me trying to look good, you trying to make me look bad, and then when you are in power, the roles are reversed. And the public needs to step up and stand up and call upon our legislators and say, hey, listen, you must draw a line in the sand and put a stop to this nonsense.
Because we no longer have the luxury of waiting for them to continue playing the tit-for-tat politics with such a serious issue, because blood is literally spilling in the streets, yes?
Exactly. And the thing is, it is unbelievable to think that you would have legislators who, in a sense, would actually be wanting to see the crime rate go up simply to make a government look bad so that they could then now go on a platform and say, well, look, the government is not dealing with crime, vote them out, put us there instead. And then when they are in office now, the Now opposition does the same thing. And, it really, really has been a tremendous farce. And, it's really a travesty of justice in Trinidad and Tobago, what has been occurring in our parliament repeatedly. And I think all sides have this type of, foolish political football with the issue of crime.
But you just remember what the ex-prime minister said on Monday. Keep your whistles, bring out your flags and everything else. There could be an election in the air and not just a local government election.
Right. Well, no, she was speaking in relation to the election petitions, which are currently before the court, and the decision is expected within a month's time from Justice Dean Miradina Mora. So she was speaking prospectively, I guess, hopefully, in relation to that. But you see, the thing is, we have no difficulty with a scenario such as that if a court makes a ruling in that regard. But separate and apart from that, you have the business of the country to progress with. And this is what I think distinguishes us from a civilized, developed nation. You look at other countries, you look at even, within the Caribbean, where you are able to see even countries like Barbados, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, even though they may be at war with each other, when it comes to major, serious national issues, they are forced by the public to say, hey, listen, let us deal with this. Let us agree on the legislation which is for the benefit of the country. I mean, even in the U.S., as divisive as, it is between the Republicans and the Democrats, when they had the crisis with the debt ceiling, despite the fact that the Republicans would have loved to make President Obama and the Democrats look really badly, the nation called upon the Republicans and said, hey, listen, you need to deal with this. We need to agree to this legislation so that, we can get this bill passed so that the debt ceiling can be raised. And it was done at the last minute, but it was eventually done. And we need to start seeing that level of maturity, and we will only see it if the public calls upon and insists to our politicians that they are not tolerating this type of game, because we, the public, are also guilty of, not speaking up enough about it.
I'm just thinking though, if the folks in Parliament who are engaged in this sort of tit for tat politicizing of the crime situation, the one-upmanship all the time, if they understand that they have continued to break their oaths of office and oaths of allegiance over and over and over again by continuing down this path, and even when people are in office in a position to make a change, whatever recommendations that are brought forward, whatever policies are pursued, somehow they never ring true, somehow they are never followed through, and only enough is done. And when you examine, it turns out that some connection was enriched in some way, but there was not really any concrete result or real chunk taken out of the crime scourge. Yes?
Because I'll tell you why, Jesse and Edison. The fundamental problem with politics in Trinidad and Tobago is that we have allowed our politicians to always have paramountcy of loyalty to party above loyalty to country. Mm-hmm. So in other words, they all go in there and their first duty is to secure the interest of their party and their party members and their party faithful. And everything that is wrong flows from that. Because you have, as you just mentioned, the issues of the corruption and the nepotism and the paybacks and the kickbacks, because you may have had big party financiers who are now calling in their shots and calling in their markers and saying, hey, listen, I need to get something for that, that kind of thing. So therefore, loyalty to party has always trumped loyalty to country in Trinidad and Tobago when it comes to our politicians. And we, the public, have sat repeatedly for decades and observed this, and we've grumbled about it in the rum shops and on the street corners and on the bars and on the Roadford Square and Independence Square. But the point is, we do not make our voices heard in a strong and strident enough way so that the politicians actually take notice and change their behaviors. And until we do so, it will never change.
But if it is a situation where the only real power you have is every 5 years to, change your vote in one direction or another, and any other sort of activity, activism, awareness raising, consciousness raising that's done within that 5-year interregnum before polling day is not really taken seriously. Civil society has been speaking on this issue for quite some time. Professional associations have been speaking on this issue for quite some time. But whoever is in administration seems not to take those recommendations on board, really. They may filter some of it into the policy that they're addressing, but only enough to perhaps appease the natives and as much as would fit in with their particular agenda. And it happens whomever is there, yes?
Right, and you see, part of the difficulty has been that there has never been a consistent, credible third force as an alternative. So therefore, it's either one or the other that you've been stuck with. And when I say one or the other, I mean, the PNM has been consistent as one party, but I mean, even the UNC, in whatever manifestation, whether it was Club 88, DLP, whatever, they have represented, at various times, the same trend of an opposition force. So therefore, what you have is that there's a limit in terms of the choices that the public has. There is definite need for a credible third party to come to the fore in Trinidad and Tobago and present an alternative. But they have to show that they are going to be a different type of entity. You cannot end up being something like what occurred with the debacle of the COP, where you end up being sucked into all the bad ways of the same party that you came out criticizing in the first place. At the end of the day, you couldn't tell the difference between the COP and the UNC. Prakash Ramada was there just as a figurehead, supposedly representing a different entity, but in all respect, he was basically mouthing everything of the UNC. So therefore, the public lost faith and trust in them. But the point is, there is really a need for a credible third force to stand for country first and stand for principles and for Trinidad and Tobago. Nobody is doing that. Everybody is seeking party interest and partisan interest, and even many of our leaders in society and the persons who ought to know better, when they stand and they're supposed to speak for Trinidad and Tobago, they all speak, by and large, with a narrow partisan, leaning, because they are ultimately seeking to line themselves up for a favor from one side or the other.
Looking at the information they want, Mr. George, they said they want to know how many people are still currently held without bail in the prisons. The AG says, well, I have to speak to the judiciary, I have to speak to the DPP, I have to speak to the police, I have to speak to prisons, as the case might be. So they can't get the information. And the UNC also wants to know, what other plans do you have for crime fighting, as the case might be? So, I mean, they know that they will never be able to get that information. So hence, when they go back to the House, they say, well, we can't support these amendments.
Yeah, but the point is, I think those are legitimate and valid questions.
But it takes a long time to get the information.
The point is no. But here's the thing, Edison. I think it's inexcusable that you could tell me that you are in government and you are not able to get those figures within very short order. Now, while...
What's the point of you having a ministerial title?
This is my point. So I don't accept the excuse that, well, you cannot get that type of information. How could you not get that information? The thing is, let me tell you, Edison, we need to really start thinking outside the box in Trinidad and Tobago. And we really need, let me tell you, we need a Trinbagonian spring. The way how you had the Arab Spring, that kind of thing, where the people really realized and said, hey, listen, this thing is
enough is enough
for us. That's right. That's what we need, because I'll tell you something. There are so many creative ways that you could deal with things like overcrowding in the prisons, right? Let me tell you, Canada, and this is just one country, I'm just giving you an example. years and years ago, they implemented systems, to deal with overcrowding. They had things like weekend sentencing. In that, okay, if a man is sentenced to, say, for instance, a short term, say, for instance, a 6 months or, a 9 month term, he served that term on weekends.
He would have to report every weekend.
That's right.
Okay.
So if this person is, say, for instance, employed as a clerk or say, for instance, a laborer or whatever, you keep your job. You keep working, because as far as they're concerned, we are not going to have you as a permanent burden on the state, whereby we are, minding you and taking care of you all the time. No. You keep your job. You work Monday to Friday. Friday evening at 6 o'clock, you check in. You serve 2 days. All right. You go out Monday morning. You report back to work. All right. And you do that for several weekends until you serve out your sentence. And that way, the person, let me tell you, there are so many benefits to just a simple solution such as that. That person, from that experience of being in prison every weekend, first of all, he's deprived of all the lying, all the fun, all the enjoyment, everything every weekend. So for sure, he knows he does not want to go and commit another offense to get this kind of scenario, because you are still in society, you are understanding and enjoying the benefits of being in society on a Monday to Friday, but all your weekends are gone. So therefore now, what is your thinking? You're going to tell yourself, look man, I can't handle this anymore. I don't want to ever be in this again. So therefore, once you've served out that weekend sentencing term, your thinking is definitely different, because you are able to see both sides of the coin concurrently. In other words, Monday to Friday, you're living a normal life. Saturday, Sunday, you're in jail. And the pattern repeats itself. So therefore, which will you really choose as any normal, rational human being as the preferred option?
And there's a restorative element built in within something like that. Yeah.
This is the point, because then now you are able to say, well, look, hey, I can ensure that, look, if I speak to others, I will tell them, hey, listen, it don't make sense to have to face this kind of thing. So therefore, you have a change in attitude, a change in people's perceptions and the way they look at things. Let me tell you, there are so many creative ways that we can find to deal with the overcrowding in the prisons, because I saw the Law Association mentioned it, and it's a very valid concern that the Law Association has raised. In other words, you can't just have persons, being deprived of their constitutional rights and being kept in inhumane conditions. And the point is, there's no speeding of the processing of their matters or the justice system to ensure that matters are dealt with. Remember, the whole thinking behind this was that, look, within that 120 days, your matter must be started. I am sure, I know of actual circumstances where people have spent more than the 120 days and their matters have not even close to being started. Not even close. Because, first of all, remember, this is linked mainly to issues with firearms offenses or allegations of having firearms. The Forensic Science Center, the typical wait time for any analysis to come back is between 2 to 3 years.
That's another travesty.
If you knew that up front, then there's no way you could really expect that a matter will be started within 120 days. You see, so therefore, we really have been playing games with the problem, and we have been playing games with the problem. Every year we keep increasing the allocation to the Ministry of National Security because we keep throwing money at the problem. But as you said, Jesse, and you alluded to it earlier, the result of it is that you have persons getting favorable contracts here and favorable contracts there, and you're not really dealing with the root of the problem, because it is this one who wants to bring in armored personnel carriers, or this
or another person who wants to bring in speed guns.
Right, if you understand me. So therefore, what you have is basically persons riding the gravy train, but the point is no solution being found.
Now, please, folks who are listening, just understand we're not condemning these people who are entrepreneurial with regard to security matters, but the fact of the matter is that shouldn't be the only consideration when dealing
This
with
is the
national
point.
security.
And it must lead to a solution in that you must actually see some benefits to the country
Yes,
for it,
yes.
and some actual reduction in crime. And I remember I've spoken repeatedly on the issue of the reduction, in that it's not good enough for the police service to come out and trot out, numbers on a chart and say, well, if you compare this particular year to that particular year, it shows that this type of crime is down, or that level of safety or security is up. Because the point is, you could always play games with numbers when it comes to statistics. We all know that. But the point is, people in Trinidad and Tobago, are they feeling safer? When you look at the television, you look at the internet, and you see so many robberies taking place, so many armed hold-ups, so many business places being robbed and held up on a daily basis. And those are only the ones we see. What about the ones that are not reported, that we don't even hear about? These are the concerns.
We're speaking with Martin George, senior attorney at law, and a member of the Police Service Commission. You can have your say as well. You can send us a text message.
Text us now on 2Sky. That's 2759.
Or you can call us.
We take your calls now. 625-2759. 623-8255. 624-7729.
Let's see who is on the line with us. Hello, good morning. You're on the air.
Very good morning to you, Jesse.
Yes, good morning.
And to Mr. Carr,
Santa Cruz.
and to Mr. George.
Hi, good morning.
Mr. George, if the opposition does not support the bill, and let us suppose we had to go back to the polls in respect of the 5 constituencies, would it not go against them? Thank you.
Would it not go against them? The fact that they didn't support this bail bill.
They didn't support the bail bill.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it could be an issue that would be raised on the election platform. But at the end of the day, I don't know that we in Trinidad and Tobago have a very clear and distinguished history of voting on issues. I mean, I think if you look at our record, we really don't necessarily vote in people into office based on issues.
Mr. George, just as a sidebar, the acting commissioner of police says he'll be going out to work tomorrow with or without a contract, because his contract comes to an end today. Who is responsible? I know usually you would hear 2 or 3 days before that from the authorities that so-and-so contract has been renewed for another 6 months, as the case might be. Can the acting commissioner of police go out without continue working without a contract?
Well, the thing is, if you're talking contract, then contract is the responsibility of the Ministry of National Security, right? So that is one issue. There's also the issue of his appointment, which is the responsibility of the PSC. They are 2 totally separate issues. So, for instance, the PSC has no role or responsibility in relation to a contract of employment for any police commissioner or deputy commissioner of police. Our role is in relation to appointments. So in terms of his contract issue, if he has said he is talking about his contract, then that really is an issue with Ministry of National Security, who deals with his terms and conditions of employment. So I'm not sure what their position. Because
usually we would hear previously that a few days before that the contract has been renewed for another 6 months.
Well, yes, in most cases,
yes.
you would hear that. And I mean, again, it's not a nice position to have someone in such an important post, where you feel a level of uncertainty like that. And that's why even with the issue of the appointment, we at the PSC have been doing what we could to try to move the process along. And I mean, despite, I can tell you, great obstacles, but we have kept at the task, and we are trying to push it forward to ensure that we complete our constitutional remit in that regard.
Martin George, we've run out of time this morning, but it's always educational chatting with you. We're so glad you could have squeezed us into your schedule today.
Sure, Jesse and Edison. It's always a pleasure, and thank you. And
yes.
Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
Let's see what comes out of the Parliament this week. We may have more to talk about again very soon.
Next week, yes. Sure.
Okay. We've been speaking with member of the Police Service Commission, Martin George, who is a senior attorney, looking at why there's been this seesawing on the bail bill and the anti-gang legislation. Keep it right here on Sky.
Don't touch a button. We'll be right back with more on Sky.